Welcome to Your Better Health, Volume 2 of 12. I'm your host, Jay Fox, along with Dr. Girraj Bansal. Dr. Bansal graduated from The Ohio State University and has been in private practice in internal medicine in Central Ohio for over 30 years. He's also a scientist with a PhD in engineering. Today, we're talking about happiness. Dr. Bansal, how do you define happiness?
Happiness has different meanings to different people. Okay, to me, it's a state of being that we can achieve today, tomorrow, anytime. Now, different people have given different definitions of happiness, and I will read to you what the other philosophers and what the other entrepreneurs have said about happiness. So there was a lady about 100 years ago, she was asked, how do you define success and happiness? And she said that happiness is knowing that one person lived better than you did because you did. Then you go to Einstein, and he said, if you want to live a happy life, tie it to a goal, not to people or things. Then he also said, there is a statement, he wrote a note, 17 words note, which is sold for $250,000 just recently. It says, a calm and modest life brings more happiness than the pursuit of success combined with constant restlessness. Then Warren Buffett and Steve Jobs have said that find a purpose of life and do what you like and do what you want. So that's what the happiness is. I can go on and define how the word happiness came and what do happiness mean.
Before we get into those definitions, why is it so important for human beings in 2023 to be happy in general?
Well, happiness is our right, okay? So even, it's a survival mechanism for all of us. And if we are not happy, the happiness is going to bring a lot more problems, the social problems, the family problems, the business problems, and, everywhere. So I think happiness is all well known to everybody that they need happiness, irrespective of whether they have anything else or not.
Now, there are two root words that the general public has never heard before and need to be defined. One is hedonia, and the other is eudaimonia. What do those words mean?
Okay, so what happened is that the old philosophers, they were trying to define that what is the instant happiness and what is the long-term happiness. So the hedonia means pleasure, the feeling, very short-term. And I think most of the people, even now, they relate to hedonia, the short-term pleasures. But the word which was coined by Aristotle, he brought up the word eudaimonia or monia. And what it means is it's a well-being, it's a contentment, it's a satisfaction for the long term. So if you, so there are two different philosophies. One is the short-term pleasure, one is a long-term pleasure. And the quotes I read to you, they all deals with long-term. So here we are going to talk about long-term happiness and how we can get that happiness with our efforts.
When we think about these factors, obviously we're talking about biology and we're talking about brain response. How does biology help us understand happiness?
Well, as the biology is the brain chemistry. What we have neurotransmitters, we have hormones, how the synapses and how the receptors work. Now, there is a term which is called neuroplasticity. And it says by changing your thinking, you can actually mold the brain the way you want. What we are talking about is here two components of any mental disease. So one, as I said, is the organic and one is the functional. A lot of spiritual leaders and the psychotherapy is dealing only with the functional aspects of mental disease. I just listened to a podcast by the most prominent preacher or the spiritual leader. His name is Sadhguru, and he himself mentioned that his success rate in healing his audience is 85%. So my question is, what to do about those 15%? And so what I'm saying is that these people have organic problems, either in the brain, in the transmitters. So unless we rectify those organic components, these people cannot receive the spiritual preaching. And it's just like an empty stomach goes to attend a spiritual session and he is very hungry, his stomach is empty. And the research says that under these conditions, you can only retain 15% of what you are told. So just like nutrition is important to the body, to the stomach, the nutritions in terms of supplementing and replenishing the neurotransmitters and the hormones is very important. So to answer your questions, what I'm telling is that we are not in competition with the spiritual leaders. I think they have done a great job by keeping the unhappiness at least to the 85% of the people. All I'm saying is these people have no mental disease as such. They have no genetic component. They are coming to them to deal with day-to-day problems, the conflicts. Okay, so and that is what I'm talking about, the hedonic part.
So that's the short-term issue.
Right. They will keep on coming because these problems will never end. They will always have problems at work, problems at home, and they will keep on coming to them. And even the spiritual leaders can tell us that every time those 10,000 people come, 99% are the same people. Okay, so they are never going to be cured and they are never going to be healed. I'm talking about those 15% of the people. So either they find out who are those 15% who are not getting benefited by their spiritual teaching and then send them to their physician, their psychologist, psychiatrist, get their blood tests, get to the bottom of their root problems of their disease in those 15% of the patients. And then once they are treated medically, then we can send it back to them. Okay, they will have 95 to 96% response rate in their audience.
When you talk about response rate, how does the word resilience play into this?
Okay, so the resilient is how you recover from any adverse reaction or any adverse incidents. So the faster they recover, like you asked me a question yesterday, that if somebody has a loss in the family and lost the job, these things do happen. And some people recuperate a lot faster than the other. Okay, so now what the researchers have found that the people who score the highest on resilience, they score high on the purpose of life, their personal growth, and self-acceptance. So these three people have a better resilience than the others. So then it boils down to that you have to find a purpose in life so that you can see all other problems, presently in a better perspective.
We live in a country where we are guaranteed certain inalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So in the framework of the makeup of our government is a guarantee that we can freely pursue happiness. How do we do that? Is it monetary situations? Is it the peace that we talked about? Is it being on the hedonic treadmill? How do we find true happiness?
The happiness is all inside you. Okay, so sometimes people say, well, I'm at work very happy, but when I come home, I'm very unhappy. To me, happiness is the same, because once you've achieved long-term happiness, happiness does not have time or distance criterion. So you can be happy. So when we talk about the happiness at the work or at the home, we are again talking about that hedonic that comes and goes, that we can turn the switch off from a happiness at work and then go home and then whatever you want to do. So we are all dealing with the hedonic part. But now when you come back and you're asking me the hedonic treadmill, the other name for that is hedonic adaptation. The person's level of happiness and satisfaction is same all the time. When it may fluctuate a little bit based on your needs, let's say you got a raise at work, you got some good news, and then it will raise that level of your happiness. But then it reverts back to the same level. So what the scientists are saying, that if you want to increase your activity to get more happiness, you got to enhance your consciousness, your mind. You should be prepared that you are going to go higher, and that would involve the physical labor.
It makes great sense, because I think that people confuse happiness with what happens in their daily life. So let's say, for example, I have a fight with my wife and I go to work and I'm in a bad mood because I've had a fight with my wife. What I have to do is I have to put that aside in order to do my work. By the same token, let's say that I have a conflict at work that upsets me in the short term, and I bring that home and I take it out on my wife. I have to check my bags at the door from work so that I don't bring that into the household. But what I hear you saying is that if you achieve that overall deep, long-term spiritual balance that affords a consistent level of happiness, then the highs will not be as high and the lows will not be as low, and you'll have balance. Is that right?
That is exactly what I'm saying. So this is again going back to eudaimonia as opposed to hedonia. Okay, so we have to work on those long-term peace. And as I said, peace is peace. It never changes with time and place.
Now, you are a big fan of acronyms. And one of the acronyms that you shared with me recently is PERMA. And I want the audience to write this down. PERMA, spelled P as in Paul, E as in egg, R as in Richard, M as in Mary, A as in apple. PERMA, PERMA. The P stands for positive emotions. Dr. Bansal, when we talk about positive emotions, what is an example of a positive versus a negative emotion?
Okay, let me clarify this also, that this is not my equation. It was actually brought up by a Australian psychiatrist or a positive psychologist, and his name is Martin Seligman.
Okay.
So what he was trying to do is he was trying to say that there are several factors, like the one I'm going to talk about. They are interrelated concepts of well-being. Okay, so his first letter is PERMA, as P. P means positive emotions. I mean, it's very self-explanatory that positive emotions are the ones, they bring happiness, they keep your mood up all the time, and the negative ones are, of course, bring sadness. So this is self-explanatory.
So the next letter is engagement.
Yes, so the thing is, what it is saying is whatever you do it with passion. Okay, so same thing, find the purpose of life and then do it right. So when we say the purpose of life, it is not a selfish notion. All we are saying is just like firefighters, the police officers, the physicians, that we have this purpose of life. We have this passion. We want to do our job with perfectionists so that when we go in the community, we can serve you better. So actually, purpose of life is saying, in other words, I am very empathetical. I'm going to work for you. And that's why I'm going to learn the trade better so that you are benefited. I mean, just like in the COVID, a lot of physicians, they lost their lives, knowing that this will happen, but this was their passion, and they had a duty to do it. So that's what the E means.
Next letter is R, relationships. And while that's self-explanatory in of itself, we have relationships not just with the people we work with, but with our family, our friends, our neighbors. We also have a relationship with ourselves. What relationships are we talking about in this scientist's PERMA example?
Well, he's talking about all the relationships. Human life is not to possess possessions. All we need is our basic needs of food, shelter, knowledge. But the main purpose on this life is to have relationships with other human beings. They could be your friends, they could be your children. And then again, the bonding. Like research says that when you are social, your longevity is high. Your other diseases like Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's, even the depression is much less. So the relationship is the key, to me, is the most important thing for happiness.
The next letter is meaning.
So what we are saying is that the E and M are related, which is saying that the purpose of life plus the empathy. So when we talk about E is the engagement, that you do things right. Meaning is the same thing, that how you're going to do it. So what he's doing is he's just coined those 5 letters and then going one after another. And then the last one, which is A, is actually the accomplishments, that how you accomplish it. And he's talking about go step by step fashion and you can achieve it.
So as we talk about all of these definitions, so many philosophers have weighed in over the years, thousands and thousands of years. Let's talk more about these definitions.
So happiness was first, it came from the word Felix, F-I-L-I-X. And this was given by Socrates and Plato about 2,500 years ago. And this Latin word means, F is for fate, future, and fame, and fortune. Then it also got translated into destiny, your luck, and then the happiness. Then later on, the Aristotle said that happiness actually comes from the word happening. What he meant is that what happens in your daily life actually determines your happiness. So the day-to-day activities are the ones which are happening in your life, and that gives you happiness or sadness. Now, the two things I want to make it very clear, that unhappiness is not the opposite of happiness. The opposite of happiness is not happy. And there are two independent variables, which means you could be happy and unhappy at the same time. So if you think that you have more happiness, your unhappiness will have no impact on your life. That is not right. I will give you an example from my medical practice, and I'm sure you all are aware of the cholesterol level in your blood. There are two main cholesterols in the total cholesterol. One is called HDL. H stands for health, happiness, and high. LDL stands for lousy and low. What the researchers were saying that you have to have a very high HDL and a low LDL, but the drug companies, they were producing drugs to increase their LDH as high as possible. But the recent research shows that the patients who have high HDL does not cause them to have less heart attack or stroke. It means the high HDL has no meaning after, let's say, 60. So if your LDL is high and HDL is high, people used to think that high HDL, which is like happiness, will take care of your lousy LDL or your unhappiness. So the point is that you have to lower your LDL irrespective of what the HDL is. So same analogy applies to happiness and unhappiness, that you got to lower your unhappiness, and you just cannot depend on your high happiness.
Albert Einstein is somebody that you greatly admire. And when we think about Einstein, we think about his equation E equals mc squared. You've come up with some equations in your time. And when I asked you to come up with an equation for happiness, you said, well, happiness is all in your head. You said happiness is H plus E plus D. And that's health plus empathy plus detachment. What do you mean by that?
You know, when I did a lot of research on what is happiness and what is unhappiness. And every time I open a podcast, every spiritual leader or every psychologist comes up, H equals this, H equals this, H, and I got so confused. To give you an example, the simplest I got is happiness equals number of positive thoughts in your mind minus the number of negative thoughts. And I don't think you need a PhD to figure this out. I mean, it's very basic. And then there was another one, happiness equal to 4 letters, and they were so complicated that even with my MD and PhD, I could not understand what it really means. So then I said, then there are so many spiritual laws and spiritual principles, 7 steps to find happiness, 21 steps to find, and they are nothing but repetition. So I came up with the very basic things. It does the 3 small letters, and I was not thinking about head, but I just said, this is how it is. So the H, as I said, is your health, which includes your physical health, your mental health, and of course, your financial health. You have to have some kind of means to support your physical and mental health. We can go into 10 different laws which are existent in other things based on how you improve your physical health, how you improve your spiritual health. Again, you go to exercise, gym, and practice spirituality and other things. Then I said, based on what these philosophers are saying, you have to have consideration for other people's tears before God will look at your tears. So the purpose of life is to help others. So I said empathy, and that has so many things in it. It can teach you how to listen, what is the art of communication, what is the art of listening. It will tell you that it will cut down your ego, that you will not talk about grandiosities, you will not talk about entitlement, and do things which will please other people. The other one, I came with the D, which is detachment. And we talked about that yesterday when you asked me a question about somebody losing a job or losing a loved one. This is a very strong action, detachment. What you are telling people is that I care for you, but not care enough to intervene in your life. So what you are saying is that the whole life is impermanent. Neither you are permanent, neither your loved ones, neither your possessions. So I'm going to detach myself as I learn more about happiness and go from there. The attachment is just it brings down the corruption, it brings down the ego, it brings down the your greed. So there are so many things the spiritual leaders are talking about is don't be corrupt, don't be greedy. It's all in there. So all I'm saying is the capital H, which is happiness, equals small h, lowercase h means health, then the smaller case E, which is empathy, and then another one is D, is detachment. So happiness is in our head, spelled at HED without an A.
Okay. So we're recording this podcast the day before Thanksgiving in the year of our Lord 2023. And most people who will watch this podcast will watch it after the Thanksgiving holiday is over, but they'll be preparing for other holidays. So do you have any final thoughts about happiness for the holiday season?
I have a passion for gardening and golf, and I like to think with my mind. And then I said, most important in my life is my relationships with my friends and my loved ones. So I'll just give you one example of each. For example, you have a beautiful garden and there are a lot of flowers are blooming. And then you see one weed which is sticking out. And what you will do is you will take that last weed out so that your flowers can freely bloom in grace. Same thing when you have your mind. As we talked about positive thoughts and negative thoughts, you got to weed out each and every negative thought. Until then, the positive thoughts will not grow. And as even horticulture people can say that the dead stem also consumes your energy. So these negative thoughts do consume your energy and takes away the potentials for the positive thoughts. So you need to take out every negative thoughts before your mind can be totally calm without any shattering, without any vibrations. Now then I come back to my golf game, which I love the most, is that first of all, the golf stood for gentlemen only, ladies forbidden. And I changed that to game of life. And if you really think it is a game of life. Now, when you play a tournament, there are 4 rounds, and each round is 18 holes. And you are allowed up to 4 on each hole. So you can have 72 strokes per round, and then you have 288. The 2 things I wanted to bring out, one is that you have only control over 1 out of 4 shots in 1 hole. That is, you can choose your driver, you can choose the length of the tee, and then once you hit the ball is in the air, you do not know where it is, how far it's going to go, where it's going to land, and where it's going to roll, whether in the bunker or water. After that, you are left with about 216 shots, and you are your own. You have to choose every time, you have to make a decision every time which club to use and how far to hit. And that is what the life is all about. Once you are open in nature, most of the decisions you have to make. Now, to come back to that analogy, out of 280 shots, if you look at the championship, it's all decided by 1 or 2 shots, which means out of 288 shots, each shot is very important. Okay, so then I go to my relationships, and people say, well, I have 100 relations and 99 are great. I get along with fine. I can call them anytime. And to be honest with you, those 99 relations are silent. They are sitting in your brain, not causing any commotion, because you know you can call them anytime. They are there for you. But there is one relation which is very important to you for your loved one. And if you don't have that relationship mended, that would haunt you forever. And that you cannot live in peace in spite of those 99 good relationships. So, as I just said, that to true happiness, you got to be perfect. You got to self-reflect yourself every evening, that what did I do wrong with this interaction? What did I do in this interaction? How would I mend my last relationship with my loved one, no matter what it is? So the message I'm going to tell you is that this podcast is based on concepts and steps. These are not rules and regulations with what the spiritual leaders are telling you. We are social people. We are fun-loving people. We love others. The only problem we have depression, and we are dealing with it. So in that process, we will make our own rules. We will make our own regulations. We will make our own disciplines and follow our steps to pave the path to journey to our happiness.